Steve Perry was the voice of a generation. The soaring tenor behind Journey's biggest hits, the man whose voice could fill arenas and break hearts with a single note. But behind the spotlight, behind the adoration, there was a moment when everything nearly stopped. It wasn't on stage, it wasn't in the tabloids, it happened in a quiet doctor's office, with words so chilling they could silence even one of rock's most powerful voices. A simple routine check, a mole on his cheek, nothing that seemed alarming, until the tests came back, and suddenly, the man who once commanded stadiums with "Don't Stop Believin'" was being told he had something that could take everything away. Melanoma, the deadliest form of skin cancer, and for Perry, the timing could not have been more cruel. He had already faced a devastating loss just months earlier, the kind of loss that leaves scars no surgery can repair. So how did Steve Perry survive both heartbreak and a cancer scare in the same year? And why does this chapter of his life remain one of the least talked about stories in rock history? Stay with me, because the truth behind Steve Perry's diagnosis is darker, more emotional, and more revealing than most fans ever knew. Before we dive in, make sure you're subscribed to RetroWaves, where we uncover the hidden, emotional stories behind the icons of music. If you love finding out what really happened behind the headlines, this is the place for you. Hit like, drop a comment with your thoughts, and don't forget to subscribe so you never miss the next untold story. For decades, Steve Perry's name has been synonymous with power, passion, and perfection. His voice wasn't just distinctive, it was unforgettable. From the late 70s through the 80s, Journey climbed to the top of the charts on the back of Perry's unmistakable tenor, carrying with it songs that became anthems of resilience, love, and hope. But as much as the world celebrated Perry's talent, his personal life was marked by distance, privacy, and in later years, pain. By the early 2000s, Perry had vanished from the spotlight almost entirely. Fans wondered if he'd ever return, and rumors swirled constantly about his health, about his happiness, about whether he even wanted to sing again. Then came Kellie Nash. She was a psychologist and a brave fighter, battling breast cancer that had spread beyond hope of a cure. Perry met her through a friend, and what followed was nothing short of transformative. For a year and a half, they built a love story in the shadow of illness, and Perry later said it was one of the most powerful relationships of his life. But in late 2012, Kellie passed away, and just as Perry was beginning to process that heartbreak, another blow arrived. A doctor's appointment, a biopsy, and the three words no one wants to hear: "You have melanoma." This wasn't just a health scare, it was a moment that could have silenced him forever. But how did Perry face it? What happened next? And why did he decide to finally speak about it years later? The answer is coming. It began so simply. A mole on Steve Perry's right cheek, small, almost unnoticeable. He thought little of it. After all, how many of us ignore marks, moles, or freckles? But something told him to have it checked. The results came back, and they weren't just concerning. They were life-altering. The mole was diagnosed as melanoma, the most dangerous type of skin cancer. For Perry, who had already lost Kellie Nash to cancer just months before, the word alone was enough to open every wound. Doctors told him it was caught early, but early or not, it was still melanoma. The next steps would mean surgery, not once, but twice, 2 procedures within weeks, to ensure every trace of the disease was gone. And for a man who had just watched the woman he loved fade away under cancer's shadow, hearing that same word tied to his own body was almost unbearable. The surgeries went forward. Both successful, the cancer cells removed. But the fear that it might come back, lingered like a shadow. So why didn't Perry tell the world immediately? Why did he keep his silence, only revealing this years later? The truth is bound up in grief, in privacy, and in Perry's lifelong struggle with the spotlight. By the time of his diagnosis, Steve Perry had already stepped away from fame. He hadn't sung live in years. He hadn't recorded new music. To fans, he was a ghost of rock's golden era, a legend in hiding. Some wondered if it was injury, illness, or simply disinterest. Perry himself admitted he had battled hip issues, and later deep emotional struggles. But when it came to melanoma, he said nothing. Why? Because Perry never wanted to be defined by illness. He had just witnessed Kellie Nash fight her final fight. To speak publicly about his own cancer scare so soon after hers might have felt like turning tragedy into a headline. Instead, he retreated further into privacy. Surgery behind him, scars healing, Perry lived in silence with the knowledge that he had narrowly escaped the fate that claimed Kellie. But fans kept asking, where is Steve Perry? Why doesn't he come back? And no one guessed that one of the answers lay in a doctor's office, hidden from public view. To understand why Perry kept quiet, you have to understand Kellie Nash's impact. When they met, she was already in treatment. Her breast cancer had metastasized, spreading into her bones and lungs. She knew her time was limited, but instead of running, Perry leaned in. He fell deeply in love, even as the clock ticked. For 18 months, they built a world of hope inside the storm. He was at her side through chemotherapy, through late nights, through the small moments that became treasures. When she passed in December 2012, Perry was shattered. He admitted later that Kellie made him feel love in a way he hadn't for years. To lose her and then be told he himself had melanoma was almost like a cruel echo. This wasn't just another health scare, it was tied directly to the most painful chapter of his life, which is why perhaps Perry stayed silent for so long. Speaking about his diagnosis meant reopening Kellie's story, and that was a wound he wasn't ready to expose. But silence couldn't last forever. It wasn't until 2013 that the world heard about Perry's diagnosis. On his official fan site, Perry posted a letter. In it, he revealed the truth. He had undergone 2 surgeries to remove cancerous cells. The doctors were confident they got everything, and no further treatment was required. It was the first time fans realized just how close they had come to losing him. But Perry didn't frame it as a tragedy. He framed it as a moment of gratitude. He thanked his doctors, he thanked his fans for their love, and he acknowledged Kellie Nash, calling her memory a guiding force. For fans, it was shocking. They had always suspected Perry was a man of mystery, but they never imagined he was carrying both heartbreak and cancer at the same time. Still, even with the revelation, Perry didn't rush back to the stage. If anything, the scare only deepened his sense of caution. He knew life was fragile, and he wasn't going to waste what time he had left. But what did this mean for his music? Would he ever sing again? After revealing his diagnosis, Perry disappeared again. Years passed. No new albums, no tours, just rumors and hope. Some claimed he would never sing again. Others whispered about hidden recordings. Perry himself gave rare interviews, always careful, always guarded, but slowly, signs of life returned. In 2014, he made surprise appearances, singing with the band Eels. Fans wept hearing his voice again, even if it sounded older, rougher, touched by time. And in 2018, Perry finally released a new solo album, Traces. For the first time in nearly 25 years, he was back. The songs were drenched in emotion. Many were inspired by Kellie Nash, by grief, by survival. And listening closely, fans could hear echoes of that dark time when Perry himself faced mortality. The melanoma hadn't stopped him. The heartbreak hadn't silenced him. If anything, both had reshaped him, giving his music deeper weight, deeper meaning. But still, one question lingers. What did surviving cancer really change in Perry's life? Perry has spoken candidly since then. He knows he was lucky. He knows melanoma could have taken him, just as cancer took Kellie, and he doesn't take a single day for granted. The diagnosis didn't end his story, it reignited it. In interviews, he admitted Kellie made him promise not to hide from the world forever. She told him to keep singing, to keep sharing his gift, and perhaps it was surviving melanoma that finally gave him the push to honor that promise. Every scar, every surgery, every memory of that time sits behind the man we see now, a man who knows both love and loss, both silence and survival. And while Perry rarely talks about fame these days, when he does speak, it's clear he carries gratitude, grief, and resilience all in the same breath. Imagine it. You've just buried the love of your life. The grief still feels raw, like a wound that won't close. And then, just as you're struggling to stand again, you're told that cancer, the same shadow that took her, has now come for you. That was Steve Perry's reality. The moment his doctor said the word melanoma, Perry admitted later, it felt like everything froze. He had seen what cancer could do. He had seen Kellie's courage, her fight, her exhaustion, and now he wondered, would he be next? Would he follow her path, not on a stage, but into silence, into absence? The surgeries were swift, clinical, and successful, but the emotional aftermath was anything but clean. Perry later described those months as some of the darkest of his life. The loss of Kellie, followed by the threat of losing himself, forced him to confront a truth he had long avoided. Nothing was guaranteed. Not love, not health, not time. And yet in the quiet that followed, Perry began to feel something else. Not just fear, but resolve. Kellie had told him, in her final days, to keep singing, to not let grief take away the part of him that millions loved, to step back into the light, even if it hurt. And so, standing at the edge of two losses, one personal, one nearly physical, Perry made a choice. He would not be remembered only for silence. He would not let melanoma write his final chapter. The man who once walked away from music, who spent years hiding from the spotlight, now had something bigger than fame calling him back. A promise to someone he loved, a survival story worth telling. And in that promise, his voice cracked, weathered, but still his own, began to rise again. So what did Steve Perry's diagnosis mean in the end? It didn't end his career. It didn't silence him forever. Instead, it became a turning point. In 2018, with Traces, Perry returned not as the golden-voiced superstar of Journey's peak, but as a man who had been through fire and come out scarred, yet standing. The songs weren't just love songs. They were elegies, memories, promises fulfilled. Every lyric carried the weight of Kellie's presence and the shadow of his own mortality. Fans didn't just hear music, they heard survival. Perry's melanoma diagnosis taught him, and taught us, that life changes in an instant, that grief and loss don't erase love, they deepen it, and that even after silence, even after fear, a voice can return. Today, Perry is older, quieter, more fragile in some ways, but when he does sing, when he does speak, it comes with a wisdom that only pain and survival can give. The diagnosis didn't take him, it gave him something to fight for. And maybe that's why, all these years later, fans still lean in when Steve Perry opens his mouth. Not because they expect perfection, but because they know they're hearing a man who almost lost everything, but didn't. Steve Perry's journey through love, loss, and survival is more than just a rock story. It's a human story. And if it moved you the way it moved us, make sure you're part of the RetroWaves community. Hit that like button, subscribe, and tell us in the comments. Do you think Perry's silence made his return more powerful, or did fans deserve to know sooner? And stay tuned, because while this was the story of a diagnosis that almost ended everything, our next story reveals a secret that might change how you see another legend forever, only here on RetroWaves.